It starts quietly. One day they're sending you songs at 2 a.m. and telling you secrets they've never shared before. They're looking at you like you're the only person who really sees them. There's something magnetic in their gaze, like they're not just looking at you, but into you. And then, silence. No fight, no explanation. Just silence that rings louder than any scream ever could. You check your phone. Nothing. You check again. Still nothing. And deep down, a cold realization sets in. They're not coming back. That's how Scorpio ends things. Not with drama, not with long goodbye speeches, not with second chances, but with a complete vanishing act that leaves you staring at a memory, wondering how someone so emotionally intense could switch off like that. But here's what most people don't understand. Scorpio didn't leave in that moment. They left weeks ago, maybe months. You just didn't notice. Because when a Scorpio cuts you off, it's not sudden for them. It's calculated, it's processed, it's emotionally grieved in silence long before you get the memo. So why do they do it? The truth is Scorpio doesn't believe in half measures. When they're in, they're all in. And when they're done, they're all out. There's no gray area, no lingering, no breadcrumb trail. If you're looking for closure, forget it. Scorpio is the closure. But it's not because they're heartless. It's because they feel too much. And to survive their own emotions, they build walls so high, not even their past selves can climb over them. They're not warning you before the cutoff because they've already tried. In subtle ways, they've pulled back slightly, hoping you'd notice. They've tested your loyalty in small, silent ways. Maybe they told you something personal and watched how you handled it. Maybe they opened a tiny crack in their armor to see if you'd respect the vulnerability. And if you didn't, they made note. Scorpio doesn't confront you when they're done. They observe you and then they disappear. Because confrontation requires them to expose more emotion, more pain. And they've already felt enough. In their world, silence is the most powerful ending. It's not revenge, it's protection. You see, Scorpio has a memory like a vault, not just of what you did, but how it felt when you did it. And once the emotional scale tips too far, they don't need to weigh the logic. They've already drowned in the feeling. And feelings are what they trust more than words. So when they walk away, it's not impulsive, it's deliberate. It's the final act in a long, quiet play you didn't realize you were starring in. Now here's what most people get wrong. They think Scorpio cuts people off because they're angry, but often they're just disappointed. Disappointed that someone they let in didn't understand how rare that access was. Disappointed that after offering a love so deep, someone mistook it for weakness. Disappointed that they gave you the map to their heart and you still got lost. And that disappointment doesn't come with warnings. They won't tell you they're drifting. They'll just start drifting. They'll text less. They'll stop sharing. They'll laugh at your jokes, but their eyes won't. They'll listen, but their energy won't reach you anymore. And one day you'll realize you're talking to a version of them that's already halfway gone. And when they finally leave, they won't block you out of spite. They'll block you to preserve what's left of themselves. Because once a Scorpio truly loves you, a part of them never stops. And to cut that emotional thread, they have to bury it deep. They're not ghosting you. They're grieving you while you're still alive. And maybe you'll text them weeks later, months even. Maybe you'll apologize or reach out just to see if there's still a door. But by then, Scorpio has turned that door into a wall. You can knock, but they won't answer. Because for Scorpio, letting go isn't just about moving on. It's about erasing the path back. Not because they don't care, but because they care too much to go through it again. You might ask, why no closure? To them, closure is a conversation that's already been had internally. They've played out every argument. They've sat in every silence. They've reread every message. They don't need to talk. They need to heal. And they can't do that if the wound keeps reopening. Even if you mean well. Even if you've changed. Scorpio doesn't leave in hope. They leave in finality. You might never understand it. You might replay everything wondering where it went wrong. But Scorpio doesn't look back to explain. They look forward to survive. And yes, it's hard. It's hard to accept silence when your heart wants sound. It's hard to be cut off when all you wanted was connection. But with Scorpio, you were never dealing with someone who loves halfway. You were dealing with someone who either dives in fully or swims away without a splash. They're not cold, they're fire underwater. And when the flame burns out, they don't try to relight it. They swim deeper, into the dark, where memory can't follow. And maybe, just maybe, that's why you still feel them. Not because they're coming back, but because they loved you so fully. Even their silence echoes louder than words ever could. That's why Scorpio cuts you off without warning and never looks back. Because for them, letting go means disappearing entirely. Not to hurt you, but to finally stop hurting themselves. That's the goodbye you'll never hear, and the one you'll never forget. Even if they walk past you one day without a glance, without a word, know this: they saw you. They felt everything. They just chose peace over pain. And sometimes, the kindest thing a Scorpio can do is disappear. Not because you didn't matter, but because they did. So if you're wondering why they left, why they never came back, just remember, Scorpio loves like a storm, but when the sky clears, they never return to check the damage. They rebuild in silence somewhere far away, where their heart can rest, where their soul can breathe, where they are no longer loving someone who doesn't see the wreckage they left behind. You were not erased. You became a part of them they had to bury, because loving you cost them a piece of their own fire. And Scorpio never burns in the same place twice. That's why they cut you off, without warning, and never ever look back. But here's what's wild. Even when they're gone, you still feel them. In music, in dreams, in the little things they once noticed about you that no one else ever did. Because when Scorpio loves, they don't just enter your life. They brand it. And maybe one day you'll try to move on. You'll find someone new. They'll smile at you kindly, listen to your stories. But somewhere deep inside, you'll catch yourself comparing them to the ghost who never said goodbye. And you'll realize, a Scorpio's silence isn't absence, it's an echo. One that never fades, one that teaches you that love isn't always about holding on. Sometimes it's about knowing when to disappear. And maybe, just maybe, that's the hardest kind of love to recover from. Because there are two kinds of endings in this world. One where people walk away, hoping you'll chase them, and one where people walk away, hoping you won't. Scorpio is the latter. They don't need validation. They don't want revenge. They want peace. Peace that comes only when they've cut all the emotional cords tying them back to pain. Peace that comes when they know you can't reach them anymore. Peace that isn't about being seen. It's about never being touched again. So if you're wondering why they went silent, ask yourself this. Were you really listening when they were speaking softly? Or did you only start noticing them once the silence grew too loud to ignore? Because Scorpio doesn't vanish without reason. They vanish because all their reasons were ignored. All the little moments that chipped away at their trust. All the small betrayals, the dismissals, the emotional neglect. They saw it all, they felt it all. And while you were brushing it off, they were building an exit. Not in haste, in heartbreak. So the next time you remember them, don't just remember how they left. Remember how deeply they stayed, until staying became the thing that broke them. That's why Scorpio cuts you off, not for power, but for survival. And maybe the truest measure of their love was not how they held you, but how long they held on before finally letting go. So here's the truth. They didn't leave to teach you a lesson. They left because the lesson was already too painful for them to keep learning. And now all that remains is the space they once filled, the intensity you once felt, the love you didn't understand until it was gone. Scorpio doesn't look back, but you will, over and over again, until you finally understand why silence was the loudest answer they could ever give. But what happens if you run into them again? What if fate doesn't let the goodbye stay buried? Maybe you're walking through the grocery store, minding your own life, and there they are, aisle 4. Frozen, just like you. Maybe they're holding a basket. Maybe you're holding memories. And for a second, the whole world holds its breath. They don't flinch. They see you completely. And yet, they walk right past you. Not out of cruelty, but out of something more painful, finality. Because for Scorpio, seeing you again doesn't reopen the door. It closes it more tightly. You might think they feel nothing in that moment, but inside their heartbeat is a battlefield. It's racing, but they've trained themselves not to show it, not because they want to prove they've moved on, but because they had to. Every glance, every faint smile from you, it hurts more than you know, because what you're trying to revive, they had to bury with their own hands, and digging it up again would only kill them twice, even if they dream of this moment, even if your face never left their mind, even if they wrote 1,000 unsent messages over months. They won't break their silence, because if they did, they know they'd fall back into something they barely survived escaping. So yes, they'll pretend they didn't see you, but that night, they'll remember every second. The way you blinked when you saw them, the way your breath caught in your throat, the way nothing was said, and yet everything was felt. That's the secret agony of Scorpio. Not that they don't care, but that they care too much to reopen a wound that never truly healed. They'll walk away with that pain, quietly, proudly, completely. And you'll stay frozen in aisle 4, wondering if it was really them. Wondering if you should have said something. Wondering if they felt it too. They did. They always do. But Scorpio was never built for halfway love. They were made for all or nothing. And once nothing becomes the only path left, they choose it with the full force of their soul, even when it rips them apart. Because to Scorpio, going back doesn't just mean remembering, it means relapsing. And love for them isn't just an emotion, it's a transformation. Once you've shaped them, left a scar, built a home in their mind, they can't just knock on that door again. Because it's not a house anymore, it's a ruin. And Scorpios don't live in ruins, they rise from them. And now let's talk about the part you'll never hear from them. Not in person, not in text, not in apology, but maybe here, the truth they'll never tell you. They didn't leave because you weren't good enough. They left because they lost themselves in you. Because every time they forgave, they chipped away at their own boundaries. Every time they stayed quiet, they swallowed a truth that scratched their soul. Every time they loved you harder to fix the cracks, they bled more into the foundation. And one day they realized they were standing in a relationship where they couldn't hear their own heartbeat anymore. So they walked, not away from you, but back to themselves. Scorpios don't talk about this because to do so means opening the very wound they sealed shut. It means admitting they loved you with a ferocity that scared even them. That they waited for change longer than they admitted. That they saw signs but prayed anyway. That they clung to hope with bloodied hands. But that's not who they want to be anymore. They want peace. And peace to them is silence. So they won't explain. They won't revisit. They won't relive. But if they could say one last thing, if Scorpio had a moment of vulnerability that no one else would ever hear, it would be this. I never stopped loving you. I just started loving myself more. And that's why they never look back. Because to look back is to abandon the version of themselves they fought so hard to become. And no love, no matter how passionate, how haunting, how unforgettable, will ever be worth losing themselves again. So the next time you wonder why they vanished, know that they didn't disappear into nothing. They disappeared into healing. And no matter how quiet they seem now, trust this, the loudest thing they ever said was leaving.